Okay, so I'm going to do something a little different in this episode. I realised that the way I was going about recording, editing and publishing the podcast, I was leaving a big gap in time, and this gap in time was making it hard to make a connection with an audience. Maybe at first I didn't think I'd get an audience, so I didn't consider it at all. Now though, Kognoggs is being listened to consistently, in a number of countries. And who saw that coming? I certainly didn't. And there are people starting to engage and leave nice comments. So now I'm thinking about this gap and trying to close it. So first up, I'm going to do a shout out to the Leicester and Leicestershire LEP, Gerard Manley, Sahira Mohammed, who you heard in episode 2, and Nacho Galvez. Thank you for all your support. Then I'm going to name check guests who've given up their time and recorded an interview. Some of these are already out, some are scheduled to go out, and some are yet to be edited. So thanks to Shelley Cousins, Sahira Mohammed again, Dan Templeton, Helen Ashby, Laura Kyle, that's the episode coming up after this, Michael Britland, who's coming soon, and Alan Sue, and Jeremy Williams. I also want to thank Sweden for their support. Yes, that's right, Sweden, the country. I'm thanking all of it. Outside of the UK, Sweden is responsible for more downloads of the podcast than anywhere else by miles. This is largely down to Volkan Serengil, and apologies Volkan if I've mispronounced your second name, I've never heard it spoken. Volkan is a careers counsellor in Stockholm, spreading the word about Kognoggs and sharing it with his network, so thanks Volkan. I hope you're listening. See if you can get someone from Sweden to be a guest. That would be super interesting. Whilst we're on the subject of overseas listeners, if you're listening in the US, especially if you're in the state of Virginia, then make yourself known on Twitter at Kognoggs Podcast, and thanks for listening. And that goes for you if you've listened in Austria, the Isle of Man, Spain, India, Jersey, Estonia or the Ukraine. I'd love to connect with you guys and get some different perspectives on career education from where you are. Over on Facebook, I'm going to name, big deep breath here, Liz Tattershall, Yvonne Haymans, Diane Fisher, Chantal Hampton, Steve Keith, Helen Hillier, Louise Cornt, Stacey Drake, Twister Maron, Craig Turton, Gemma Doughty, Craig Rothwell, Nick Lawrence, Lynn Addison, Vanessa Templeton. Are you related to Dan? Jessica Dawson, Josh David, Paul Denton, Debbie Williamson, Faheen Khan, Louise Saunders, who've all interacted with Kognoggs posts. Over on Instagram, thank you to all the podcasts who follow Kognoggs just because the word podcast is in the title. I'd like to give you all a name check because your support is so important to me, but I can't, because I can't be associated with your content and I don't want a name check to be an endorsement. My guess is you're just blindly following every podcast you can find to make your own podcast look popular, and I get that, it's okay, but it's also okay for me to be honest about that here, because I know you're not listening. Is that ethical? I don't know. Anyway, Instagram's new to me. Maybe I'm not doing it right yet. By the way, Stacey Drake from Facebook, you're okay to follow me on Instagram. That's fine. And my 3 kids, that's cool too. And Jacob, my daughter's partner. At the moment, Twitter is the best place to engage with the podcast. I won't cold call anyone, so if you want to get involved and be a guest, then you're going to need to show some interest in me first. It's all about working ethically, you see. I'm on Facebook, so you can get in touch there too. I'm also on Instagram, as I said. And a point to make here, apart from Sahira, I'd never met any of my guests before the interview, so don't be afraid to just drop me a message to say you're interested. You don't need 1 million followers on Twitter. You don't need to be the executive head of a multi-academy trust. Remember, if you're involved in education, you're involved in career education. So get involved. We all have a story to tell. In terms of development, now I know there is an audience and I feel encouraged to press on a bit, I've started to upload episodes to YouTube so that anyone who finds it helpful can access the podcast with subtitles or via the transcript. But please don't hold me to account for the accuracy of the transcript. That's all on Google. I don't have time to proofread the transcripts. I've also downloaded a plugin for the website with the intention of making it easier for people to leave comments and engage over there, but I've not got round to figuring out how it works yet. I think engagement is the big development. I'm really keen to hear some feedback, some ideas for future episodes, some feedback on my technique, good reads to develop my practice. I've only just qualified, remember, and it's been difficult to work with students in a global pandemic and all. Finally, encouraged by the listening figures, I've invested in an audio interface, and this segment is the first recording on it, so let me know if you can tell the difference. Anyway, thank you to everyone, you're amazing, and apologies if I haven't given you a name check and you deserved one. Which reminds me, thank you to my wife Deb, who puts up with me doing this all the time. I love you. And now, on with this week's episode. Hello and welcome. You're listening to Kognoggs, a career ed podcast where each fortnight I give a guest free professional career coaching, whether they like it or not. And along the way we share our own career stories, engage with the politics and pedagogy of career education, and explore one little corner of the ever-changing world of work. My name is Rob Cooper. I'm a careers leader and a registered career development professional. I have an interest in careers education, and if you're trying to be an adult in this liquid world, so do you. Episode 4. Skills are multiplying. This week I'm talking to Laura Kyle. Laura is a recently qualified careers leader at her school in Leicestershire. We only live a few miles apart, but have never met before. For context, this interview was recorded about a week after Leicester was placed in local lockdown. Hi, nice to meet you.
And you, how are you?
Good, thank you. I had to resist the temptation to call you Harry. You come up as Harry on the Zoom meeting, which is quite funny.
It's my little boy. He's been having Zoom parties with his mates, so I've just left it as him.
Okay, that's great. Thank you very much for agreeing to do this.
Thank you for asking.
I know there's a kind of national narrative in some parts of the press to say that teachers aren't doing anything and we're all lazing around. But I know full well that you will be extremely busy going into the last week of term. So thank you for that. So how have the last couple of weeks gone for you?
Not too bad. We've just been put back into lockdown again.
Yeah.
So year 10s have gone again. So we're back onto the rota of key workers and vulnerable children. So I was in yesterday with the key worker kids.
Yeah.
And they've cut short the term. So we were meant to finish on, I think it was the 15th, a week on Wednesday, but they've shut us now from Friday. So the 10th we're closing from now on. So it's not been too bad. It's not been too bad at all.
Yeah.
But just weird.
Yeah, it is weird. It is weird. And sometimes you kind of sit there and think, what am I doing?
I know.
How did this happen?
I genuinely think I forgot how to teach. Like, just to stand in front of a class of kids and just like deliver stuff. By the time we get back to sort of like August, September time, I'm going to need some like serious CPD to like kick me and get going again.
The initial conversation may seem trivial, but it's really useful in career guidance. It's amazing how much you can pick up about a client just by saying hello and asking them how things are. It gives an opportunity to tune into their speech patterns and mirror some body language to establish rapport and empathy. Laura's body language was super relaxed from the get-go, and she spoke freely from the beginning. What I'm very keen to do is to really accentuate and signpost the kind of ethical nature of careers guidance and highlight some of the best practice for that in terms of improving safeguarding in schools and, you know, how we converse with students in a kind of more formal way, but outside of careers guidance as well. So I wanted to make sure that you'd got the information to make an informed choice about whether you want to go through with this. And I'm just going to go through one or two things. I've got screens in front of me, so when I'm looking away from the camera, there's nobody else in the house at the moment. You might hear the dogs. The dogs might get up at some point. So there's nobody else here. I'm not being distracted. I've just got lots of Post-it notes on my screens to remind me to go through things. So from a confidentiality point of view, this is clearly not a confidential meeting.
No.
As long as at the end you're happy for me to publish this. Potentially there are 7.5 billion people who could listen to it. In reality, we'll be lucky to get 30. But it's not confidential. You will get a copy of it in its finished format at the end, at which point you can get back to me and say, can we just take that bit out? I'm not sure about that. You can, if you want, say, do you know what? I want to pull out completely and I won't publish it at all. So, you maintain that kind of control over it until it goes out. In terms of what I'm going to do, I'm going to follow a kind of very basic kind of careers guidance format. It depending how the conversation goes, it sometimes feels a little bit crowbarred in, and I have to do some kind of editing with it to make it make sense. But that's okay. That we start off with a plan, and if we go off piece, that's not a problem. So I'm going to spend as much of my time doing some active listening, doing some deep listening. Once I've finished with this bit, I'm going to pass over to you and just get you to talk about your current situation as much as I can. One thing I do quite a lot is I leave what some people find an uncomfortable amount of kind of dead space after you think you've finished speaking. I find that if I just sit quietly for a little bit longer, people tend to add a bit more. And I've found at school in terms of investigating behavior that's a really good technique as well. If you're asking your year nines who done it, if you just sit for a little bit longer, somebody will tell you. So that's really useful. I'll summarize what you've said just so you get a sense that, I have actually listened to what you've said, and reflect on that. If I've got any questions, this is the bit where for me, these interviews are a bit like CPD. I've only recently qualified as a career guide, and I would have been planning to do lots of careers guidance in schools, but we're in lockdown. And so this is partly a way to practice the skills that I've only just qualified in. And one of the ones that I'm not very good at is telling people why I'm asking a question, which is a really good technique. But I always forget to do it. So I'm going to try and do that today. I've got it on my notes. The final thing to say is we're not here to just, nod and agree with everything that each other says. No. So I might challenge you at some point, if something that you're saying kind of doesn't fit maybe with something that you said previously or with my ideas. And I invite you to challenge me on that as well, because I think that makes the conversation more interesting. So based on all that, you're happy to carry on?
Yeah.
You're certainly looking relaxed and comfortable with this. So
I'm all good.
I didn't expect anything different with that. I always send guests contracting information in advance. For anybody interested or anybody who thinks that they might want to be a guest on the podcast, you can go to kognoggs.co.uk and read the information straight off the webpage. I guess this might explain Laura's response to this section. She's very trusting and really just wants to get on with things. At least that was the perception I had when I was talking to her. From her point of view, she's already agreed to these things, and I suppose really I'm speaking to the podcast audience as much as I am to her in this case. The contracting phase is super important to ensure the client is fully aware of the ground rules and the purpose of the meeting, and that they have an idea of where the conversation is going to lead. This is what ethical practice is. Ensuring informed consent is sought. So even with clients who are less interested in the details and are happy just to get on with the interview, professionals should never skip this section. Regular listeners to Kognoggs will recognise some of my phrases during the contracting phrase. I think it's good practice for professionals to have some scripted elements of the contracting section to ensure all clients get the best, clearest information from you. Okay, so we've been going about 10 minutes and I've done most of the talking, so let's change that up a bit. So the next section is just getting an understanding of some of your values, your career pathway, how you've ended up to be where you are now, and a little bit about where is now. You know, I know you're a careers leader, and that's about all I know. So over to you.
So I've been teaching too long. It must be about 10. That's scary. About 10 years now. I've been teaching, all around Leicestershire. So I started off in Hinckley. It was John Cleveland, and then came back towards this way when I had my first little one. I'm a science teacher, so that's actually my actual role. Initially, was a science teacher, and I moved to Charnwood College in Loughborough, where I was second in department there in science for a bit. And then I had my second son, and I decided actually it sounds horrible, I didn't really want to actually be that work orientated at that point with 2 little kids under sort of 4 or 5. I just wanted to be mum. I wanted to work, but didn't want to be like swamped, as you know we can get in this job. So I decided to move closer to home. So I live in Syston, which is literally 2 minutes from Roundhill's door. So we are so close to school now that I thought actually when my oldest starts school, I'll be close to him. And the job literally just came up at exactly the right time. And it was a science teacher job again. And I've only been at the school for 2 years, I think now. But it was sort of last July kind of time. The internal roles were kind of being allocated and sort of job specs were being put out and things. And the one for careers lead came up. We hadn't had a careers lead at school previously. SLT sort of did that. There was an assistant principal who took charge of that, but she has so much else to do that obviously, and you need to have a careers lead in place. So they put an internal job advertisement in and I applied for it, mainly because if I'm honest with you, I hadn't really had anything to do with careers before. Absolutely like nothing. I'd sort of ran a boys achievement group at John Cleveland in my sort of 2 or 3 years teaching, but that was more helping them apply for college. That was sort of as far as it went. There was nothing really more to it. And then, as I said, I just thought, you know what, I'm going to try something different. It will help me learn something new. It will help me in my teaching almost, because if I know the kind of skills that employers are looking for, if I know some more that other people actually want from these kids, then it actually can enable me to teach better. So I went for it, got it, yay. And so I've kind of been in this role now for about 12 months. I was then approached at Christmas, just gone, to be head of PD, or PSHE as it's mainly known as well, because the head of PSHE left. So they said obviously careers kind of comes into PSHE, so if you could do both roles, that'd be great. So I absorbed sort of that as well at Christmas time, and then we were all looking like it was going great, and then COVID hit. So it's like we've got so many things lined up sort of March, April, May time for the year 10s, for the year 9s, and they've all just gone awry. So I've not really had a full year yet being a careers leader within the school without it being interrupted. So I'm kind of looking forward to just an academic year where actually I can just crack on and do it without any interruptions really, and just let's see where we need to improve, and let's see what we are good at already and where I need to plough my time into the different areas that we're not particularly good at.
And potentially if that then becomes your first full academic year at it, it could well be the most challenging academic year in education for careers and PSHE.
Exactly. It's going to be so difficult this year for careers leads, all staff in general, to be honest. We don't know what's going to happen. We all, I mean, at the moment, it's a massive getting together for results day. I mean, usually results day, such a lovely time. They can just come in, they get with their friends, they give each other hugs. There's tears, it's happy. You get to say goodbye. You write down where they're going to college, so you can keep in touch with them and things. And that's pretty much it. Because we don't have a sixth form, so obviously we let them all go at year 11. But for this year, it's like scrabbling around trying to put together a results day. Even that at the minute is very difficult because obviously they're getting results by email. So what if there are kids that haven't got the grades that they need? Are they allowed to come into school for appointments? Are they going to be able to have access to us? It's all, I mean, we have sort of put something together, but we haven't sort of dotted the I's and crossed the T's as yet, but we are sort of there. I'm going to be available on the day and the day after on the phone for the first day, and then actually in school the day after to see if we can sort of if they do need appointments, I'll be there. But it's just very, I don't know. I like results day. I always have. It's one of my favourite days being a teacher. It's lovely to see the kids get what they deserve, and then that's just been it's gone, and it's just so sad.
Yeah, it is. It's really great to hear a school and yourself making that connection between PSHE and careers. So to get a bit of a picture of your situation at the Mo, you've picked up careers, having come from a science teaching background, and you said that you didn't have a lot of experience of kind of careers teaching.
No.
Did you do things as a science teacher from a STEM kind of background, those kinds of drop down days and enterprise things that?
Not really. I mean, at John Cleveland, when I was there initially, we did a few STEM things there. We had a crest club that ran, and we did sort of the awards there, but we had the odd day at Charnwood, but no, not really. It was, I mean, we had, it was a lot to do with women in science. We had a lot to do with, I suppose. That was the main route we kind of took. So more focusing around jobs with women. But again, a lot of them were very dry, and it sounds awful to people that came and delivered it, because I don't mean it to be nasty at all. But even we were getting all the girls together and the women were coming in and delivering, and it was very, you could tell they probably hadn't had lots of contact with delivering things to kids, I guess. And it almost made it seem a little bit, like you said, a bit dry, a bit dull at times. And actually there's so many exciting things they can talk about with careers in science. There's so much they can say, and it's just a lot of it was delivered in a very kind of way. And it's like, come on, we can make this better, come on. And but even then it wasn't many things. I think there's a day that's dedicated to women in science, so we'd always sort of go towards that and make sure something was sort of available for the kids to do for that. But no, not really. The only thing I've ever had really to do with careers is my boys' achievement class. That's it.
Right.
So I was a tutor to 30 boys who were sort of like in like CD borderline in the old days, as it would have been. In English and maths. And it was my role as boys' achievement coordinator to sort of look at with the teachers what they could do to get their C grades. So when they did move on to year 12, they'd have that gold standard, as we all wanted, sort of then, to be able to move forward into their sort of next phase. But that was literally all I had. I hadn't really had much experience at it at all, which is why I went for it, because I thought, you know what, I need to learn I hate just sitting down. I need to learn something new. And I'd never even heard of the Gatsby benchmarks at all, not even a thing that I'd even come across. Totally new to me. So I went to talk to the AP about it when she sort of said that this job's coming out, and it was a complete new world. But it was just like, whoa. And it grabbed me. So I was like, yeah, I definitely want to do this. Definitely want to have something to do with implementing this within the school and having something to do with careers later on.
So you took on this role as careers leader. You went to the interview. You got the job. Have you done the careers leader training? What are the CPD have you had?
So it's level 7, isn't it? The one at Nottingham Trent Uni I've done. So recently we did that I started that in October and submitted everything sort of like literally just before COVID, actually.
Right. Okay.
So all passed, all good. So yeah, got that. And actually, more than the qualification, actually, it was better. I loved going to the days where we were at uni for like 3 days, I think it was. And there were so many people there from across the country that were in the same position as me, that were from various types of school, colleges, and actually just making those links with people. So there was a lady there called Claire that it works at, it used to be Lanky Boys, I don't know what it's called anymore, but she works there, and just talking to her, it's just what she does is completely different to us, and I didn't realise there was so many different ways of doing things.
Yeah.
And it was those days, rather than, I mean, obviously the qualification is lovely, and it's lovely to look around the theories of careers.
Yeah.
But it was making them links actually that I really, really enjoyed the most out of everything.
Yeah, I did my careers leaders at Nottingham Trent, probably a year before you. So you've done the careers leaders.
Yeah.
You know what Gatsby is now. What's your support like from SLT? I'm going to go back to my notes. I'm asking that question because the careers leaders stuff that comes out, this new role that was created, it did make a big point in the guidance that if you weren't on SLT, you should have really clear communication links with SLT. So how's that for you?
Do you know what? Brilliant.
Yeah.
I can't fault SLT, if I'm honest with you. We had a head change as well during COVID. So we've
during
our head
COVID.
During
Okay.
COVID. Yeah, I know, we've had it all. Our head teacher left during, it's like April time. So we've got an interim head who we are sharing with Reek Valley in Southston. And he's been with us for the next year. But I've had a few meetings with him, and he's just brilliant. He absolutely understands the importance of what we're doing. I've got an AP link. Her name's Charlie. She's outstanding. Literally, we meet one-to-one every week. We have an hour's meeting, link meeting every week to talk about what's been going, ahead in careers, etc., etc. And she's just brilliant. She's on the end of the phone when you need her. She'll fight my corner if I need her to. If there's anything that needs mentioning in SLT meetings, she'll do it. And actually, I don't think I could have done anything without her backing, if that makes sense. There's not a chance I'd have been able to get any of the sort of stuff that I want to put in place without her fighting for funding in some cases, or fighting for the timetable in some cases. So actually, she's been outstanding. She really, really has. And even Tim, the new head, I went in asking for Start Profile?
Start, yeah.
I went asking for that because I thought it looked good. I'd seen everything on the careers leader Facebook page, or they said this looks great. And actually it's not too expensive either. So I was like, fab, we could get this in, because we hadn't been making any sort of records of the student sort of time with us. So they were getting careers guidance, they were getting careers at events, but they just weren't being logged anywhere, I guess. So it was very difficult when we got to year 11. Well, what have you done? Oh, I don't know. You're that old, I haven't done anything kind of thing. Well, I know you have. Come on, let's do it. So I thought, right, we need to get something in place. And I'd seen Unifrog, and I thought, God, this is outstanding. Very expensive, probably can't afford it. So I went to ask for Start. And as I was sort of talking to Tim, he sat there and he sort of looked at me and he went, why aren't you getting Unifrog? And I said, because I've asked for this previously, but it was just a bit too expensive. He was like, no, I'll sort it. We'll get Unifrog. I was like, oh, brilliant. So we're going to get Unifrog as of sort of September, which I can't wait to use. So they are hot on it. Very, very good. I'm very lucky, I think, listening to some of the other SLT horror stories that you sort of get when you go to these sort of network things. I tell you what, I think I've fallen lucky with mine. Absolutely.
Yeah, and that's great to hear, because that, for anybody listening to this podcast in a senior leadership role, listen to this, that actually
absolutely
it has to have full support of SLT.
It does,
and it has to be whole school.
I'm so lucky that I've got Charlie and Tim backing me all the way. And it's like, now I've got PD as well, PSHE as it is, literally linking those two things together. I've now got time where I can do this. They give me time on my timetable to be able to actually implement it properly, because obviously being a full-time teacher, as you'll know, you don't get 2 minutes. And even your PPA time, you just spend running around and actually probably not doing the things that you need to be doing. It's little jobs that all add up to 15 hours in the end, and it should have only took 10 minutes. So actually, they've now given me proper time on my timetable to be able to do this correctly. And I'm hoping with the hours I've got now, I can properly pull this all together and make it something that is just embedded now. I don't want it to be, and careers in your lesson. It needs to be in. And that's what I aim to do this year.
Totally. Oh, we're on board on this. Absolutely on board on this. So that gives me a really good idea of how you've got to be where you are. So you've started off as a science teacher. You've made some career choices to prioritize your family at various points. And then fairly recently, you've gone for this careers role in school, done your careers leaders course, and if it wasn't for COVID and lockdown, you'd be well into establishing this across everywhere. And you've picked up PSHE, which maybe gives you a bit more work to do, but actually I think having those two things together just enables you to embed
they
it.
need to be together. I think they naturally go together. If you haven't got well-being, if you haven't got your mental health sorted, you haven't got your own vision sorted, you aren't going to progress in your career. So you need to have them interlinked.
I invite Laura to tell her story. I'm conscious not to dictate her starting point or to colour her narrative by asking a direct question to address. I simply hand over to her. Laura speaks uninterrupted for 3.5 minutes or so. I make a few noises to show I'm listening and give her some encouragement to carry on. Laura introduces several possible concerns or worries for me to be conscious of. New careers leader, new head of PSHE, the COVID situation. I then make a kind of reflective statement, not particularly well worded, but it had the intent of a reflective statement. I would have been better using a phrase like, from what you've said, I get the sense that you're concerned about the challenges you're facing. But I don't. We're all learning. I then move things on to explore Laura's previous careers experience. I should have signposted this question. I said at the start that I was going to try and remember to signpost these things. I should have said, I'm asking about your experience of STEM activities because you said that you had no experience of careers teaching, but this clashes with my perception that science through STEM actually do quite a bit of careers activities. But I didn't say that. So there's another learning point for me. I then ask her about her careers leader training, and again I should have signposted the question. I'm asking because being a careers leader is a challenging role, so for me to understand your position and your preparedness, I need to reassure myself that you've had some training. Then, at last, I remember to signpost a question and ask about the support she gets from SLT. I end this section by summarising the key points in her career pathway. So the next bit is about kind of agreeing a topic to talk about in a little bit more detail. And usually in a careers guidance meeting, this would be the reason why the student has knocked on your door. I've got to write a CV and I don't know how to. I'm thinking of going to this college, but I don't know whether it's right for me. All of those kinds of things. So what I've found in these interviews is it's probably an opportunity to talk about what your plans are for next year. You've already talked about wanting to embed it right across the school. You don't want it to sit as a standalone. So what are some of the barriers or worries, or even just the drivers behind that? Why do you want to do that? And maybe then from having that conversation, we can kind of narrow it down to something that we focus on.
Yeah. I mean, I'm having to do I will this year do a few more learning walks, but I was asking, I guess, at the start about examples of ways that staff were pulling in careers into their lessons, I suppose. And it kind of struck me a little bit. They were all sort of sticking on a slide here and there, if that makes sense. Yeah. So there was a PowerPoint they were working to, and I'd pop in and there'd be a surveyor, let's say. This is your salary, this is that. And I just thought, why is this not just being said? I mean, I understand the value of this slide being put up in front of kids. I get it. But again, to me, that seems like an add-on. It's almost like, oh, I've taught this lesson. Oh, I know what I can say. I'll put this in. And I don't think embedding into a curriculum is a slide attached to a lesson every now and again.
Yeah.
And I was having this conversation with a teacher yesterday when I was in, because I turned around and he was like, oh, was this okay in my RE lesson. And I was like, yeah, it's great, but I don't need you to do all that jazzy stuff. Even if you're using a particular skill in your lesson, link it to a particular career potentially they could go down.
Yeah.
They don't need to stand at the front for 15 minutes and say, you could do this job, this is the salary, this is the skill, this is the. That's my job to get that sort of link out to them later.
Yeah.
But your job as a class teacher is almost to say, I'm teaching this subject with these skills. These are the skills you can therefore take forward if you decide to. It isn't just about you can do this job. And I think that's how I've always sort of seen it before I came into this role, that careers is just about a job.
Yeah.
It's about you leaving school, going to go and get a paid job or a volunteer job, whatever, and that's that. But actually, as I've got into it a little bit more, I've sort of realised it's the skills involved actually that are the most important thing. And actually, a lot of the time when kids are sat in front of you and they're panicking about moving into year 12 and they're worrying about where to go to college and what subjects they're going to do and what they're going to do when they're 40 or whatever, it's actually stripping it all back and just saying, right, well, what actually do you like doing? What are you good at? Because can't we just pin it off there? Can't we go off? You've got to do this for the rest of your life. Can't we just focus on the things that you're good at rather than just going, I want the best paid job I can get? Because the amount of kids that come to me and go, I want a job that pays 60 grand plus, that ain't going to happen. Sorry, I'm sure we all would love that job, but it can't happen. What do you enjoy doing every day? And it's my first battle with the staff almost was to kind of get that through. Yeah, it's great that you're telling them about particular jobs. Yeah, it's great that you're telling them what the salary is of this job. My main thing is to make sure that you're telling them how your subject links later on. Because the amount of times you get as a teacher, and I bet you've had it so many times, what am I doing this for? What's the point?
Yeah.
Well, everything's got a point. Granted, you're not going to be walking around. I mean, I teach physics as well. You're not going to be walking around looking at specific heat capacity. I get that. You're probably never going to say those words in a million years again. However, the skills that I'm teaching you through the practicals, the skills that I'm teaching you through concluding from the experiment, from making an evaluation, will all link later on to any career.
Yeah.
And it's making those links, and that's what my focus is this year. I don't want it to be, oh, here's a slide, hey Ofsted, here it is. I want it to be when they walk in, the kids know, why am I doing maths? Why am I doing French? Why am I doing science?
Yeah.
Not, oh, I'm just doing this because I want to get a 60 grand job. It needs to be something they can carry all the way through.
Yeah.
And I almost want to get them out of their heads of, I'm never going to do trigonometry again. What do I need that for? No, you don't. You're right. But there are skills that you can take forward. And that's what I want to do this year. That is my aim for these next 12 months, to get that embedded more than anything.
Yeah, that's really interesting. We've kind of had those conversations in our setting, and I've had conversations in network meetings and on the podcast and social media and all over the place about that. And there's a bit of a clash of cultures as well, that, you know, we're going through a politically, in terms of education, we're going through a period of time where knowledge rich is the buzzword, and that kind of knowledge rich curriculum takes the emphasis away from skills based learning. So there's a bit of a clash there. So I always feel, when I'm talking about skills, that you've got to kind of counteract that argument a little bit.
Yeah.
And I also make the link, and it helped as a kind of lever for getting our staff on board with this, that actually it really helps with behavior management, because it is your classic question from kids who don't want to engage.
Yeah. What am I doing this for?
What am I doing this for?
Why am I doing this?
Yeah.
What's the point?
Yeah. Absolutely.
You get it all the time.
Yes.
It's constant. But the thing is, it's like, I agree. Some of the things you might think, yeah, you're right. You are never going to say these words in your life. That is absolutely agreed.
Yeah.
And I must admit, I've never like read any of the poems I read in English ever again. I finished GCSE and I passed on.
Yeah.
But the skills that I took away from my English teacher of how to analyse of what was inside those poems, and how to say and evaluate. It's that I
Yes.
want, that I took forward. It's
Yeah.
that I've took forward to my job and how I teach and things like that. And it's almost trying to get through to the kids that yes, we are, like you said, we are teaching knowledge, and yes, we are teaching to an exam almost.
Yeah.
But it's not that we want them to take away. It's the skills that we're teaching them that we want to take away. And yeah, it's great if you get great exam grades, fab. But at the same time, I'd rather have somebody that's got the exam grades as well as a skill to take with them.
Yeah.
Some skills to take to a different, because you might change your profession later down the line. You might decide, actually, I don't like what I've qualified to do. And if you've got no skills to back that up, what's the point?
Yeah, totally. And those qualifications are as good as far as they go. But to take your comparison in terms of the poetry, if you come away with your English GCSE and the only thing you can do with it is analyze poems, then that's a very restricted job market.
Exactly.
That's very niche. So being focused on skills, it's just future proofing what you do. People will always have to use those skills.
Quite. Yeah.
And we don't have to reinvent our careers programs every year, just depending on what the labour market's doing at that time.
No, I agree. I mean, yes, we do have to take into account LMI, but I think a lot of the kids now, I mean, even thinking back to when I was at school, I was very much set on I wasn't going to move away from where I was brought up. I was going to stay. But even like looking at the kids now, they're very much more willing to move. They're willing to go a lot more than I was. And even looking sort of around now, a lot of the people I grew up with are still like here.
Yeah.
They're all still around this area. I'm not saying we all are. There are still a couple that have moved on. But there are kids actually are a lot more willing to even go out of area to college, to like even to catch 2 or 3 trains or buses to go to a college that they want to go to. Whereas with us, it was always, we'll just stay at the closest one we can. And it was just the thing we did. And it's almost a shame that we only give them local market information in some cases. Because I understand, we need to give them the local LMI. I totally understand some of them will stay around it, it'll be relevant. But actually, what is the national picture? Where, if they want to be a fashion designer, where do they need to move to? Where do they need to go? And I almost don't want, I feel bad sometimes just saying, well, look at the jobs around here. This is the LMI for this area. Look what we've got. Great. But a lot of the kids, like you said, will see that and go, nah, you're all right. We want to go somewhere else. And I almost feel sometimes LMI can be used, it's great, but it can sometimes turn some kids off. If they do want to stay around here, for example, to work, and they see that the job they want to do isn't necessarily in great numbers around here, is that going to turn them off their career potentially? Is that going to make them think, you know what's the point? And it's almost trying to like battle between using it and not, I suppose. I mean, we have to, but I'm more inclined to use national. I have to obviously use local, but the national I think is a lot better, because then they can see where they need to go. And if they, as I've said, when I was at school, I was very much, I'll stay where I was brought up, I'll stay with my friends, I'll stay with my family, I'll stay wherever. But now due to, I mean, even as just sitting here doing this meeting now, this would never have happened when I left school.
No.
We would never have been able to do this or talk to people from out of area, really. So why, they might as well, that they can move to the other side of the country and that they've still got contact with people they want to. So the labour market information locally to them possibly isn't that relevant all the time, because actually they need a national picture if they have a career in mind to be able to move somewhere else.
And in some
they will. I think they feel much more comfortable to do that.
Yeah, and in some sectors they need an international picture.
Absolutely.
Particularly for higher attaining students, those students who do want to earn the big bucks, who do want to kind of rise through the ladders, being able to migrate is a key work skill.
But they seem much more willing to do that, have you noticed that sort of more recently, in a few more, I suppose in your setting it might be a bit different, but my kids especially, I've noticed a lot more of them, I mean, even in comparison sort of like 10 years ago, they want to go. They are more than willing to go to London. They're more than willing to go up north. They'll go. Whereas I wouldn't do that. I was very much like, oh no, I'll stay here.
Yes, and the staying here is absolutely fine,
of course
as long as that decision is is backed by some knowledge. So there's a kind of informed consent around it. Yeah. And you know the consequences of that decision.
Absolutely. Yeah.
And I think that's often what gets missed in careers programs, isn't it?
We live in an area around here. I mean, we are literally, if you actually do look at the LMI around here, there's an awful lot of people that are self-employed.
Yeah.
Sort of trade.
Yeah.
So plumbers, carpenters, electricians kind of thing. And a lot of the career decisions I've seen, especially with some of our boys as I've been teaching, is they're more than happy to stay around here because they're going to work with mum. They're going to go and work with dad.
Yeah.
And it's almost like, yeah, that's fine, that's great, but it's almost cutting them off. And a lot of them almost turn off in year 11 because it's like, oh, they'll take me on anyway.
Yeah.
It's fine.
Yeah.
I've got an apprenticeship either way. And I don't want them to have those aspirations just stop there, if that makes sense, which is why I want those skills to be taught better. Or not even taught better, I suppose that's the wrong way of putting it, highlighted better. Because we're teaching them what we need to teach them, but it's almost like we don't then make it explicit enough that this is a skill that you are going to use later on.
Yeah.
No, you might not remember that specific piece of knowledge I've just taught you, but the skill that you're using for that needs to be a lot more explicit in lessons, and therefore raising the aspirations and therefore making them think, I can move out of area, I can move out of the country, I can go and do what I want to do. I think it all just links together very much like that, doesn't it? And I think starting from the bottom and making sure the teaching side of it and linking the skills is good.
Yeah.
I think then the rest will have a knock-on effect.
Yeah. And it's about sharing these conversations. Teachers who are outside of the careers team don't have these conversations. No. You know, their department meetings, they don't talk about these issues. And it's about embedding careers across a whole school is how do you get this kind of quality of conversation into those department meetings? How do you get it into the heads of teachers? So we get to the topic of interest section, and I think I dictate the focus a little early on here and direct Laura to talk about her plans for next year. I guess I take the lead from the focus of her story, but I think I could have introduced the section and still left the door open for Laura to focus on something else that she'd not previously mentioned if she'd so wished. As in the previous section, I don't ask a direct question, so maybe I'm being overcritical of my own practice. Laura kicks off this section like she did the previous section with quite a long, uninterrupted talk. In this case, it's about 4 minutes long. Again, it shows the value of the guide just sitting back, listening deeply, and letting the client talk when they're able and inclined to, as Laura is here. I then talk politics a little. I guess this is an example of me playing to the podcast audience rather than to the client. But I guess there was a purpose. I pause at around 32 minutes 15. I'm pausing to give Laura a chance to come in. I'm fishing for a response, throwing the politics of the knowledge-rich curriculum out as bait. Laura blanks it, so I move on. This is an example where my practice is being influenced by my role as a podcaster. Listening to Laura, it's clear that she wants to talk about skills in her classroom, not politics. And I probably shouldn't have tried to lead the conversation in this way, and Laura quite rightly blanks me and ignores me. I suppose it's a reminder that it's very easy for us as guides to get pulled into the interaction as a conversation and forget our role as coach. Moving on to the next bit then, where we perhaps think about, okay, what as a result of this conversation, what do you take away from it as either as a learning point or as an action, something that you think, actually, I'd not thought about that particularly before this, and I need to go away and, you know, it might be I need to read a bit more about that. It might be I need to go and talk to your SLT link, or, you know, you do something else. We've come up with loads of things that we're worried about. If you had to pick one thing, what's your focus going to be on?
possibly the embedding into the curriculum part of it. I think once we've got that nailed, everything else will link to it. So I'm hoping if I can get that sorted first, then hopefully we'll have a domino effect throughout the sort of careers education our kids will get.
Yeah.
We've got we have got careers lessons in PD. They have a whole topic of it.
Yeah.
So obviously that is going to happen.
Yeah.
But like you said, I don't want it to just be, here's a slide, here's a lesson. And I've got some time on one of the training days when we come back after the summer holidays. I've got about 20 minutes to talk about PD and careers. And I think actually what I'm going to be focusing on is what we were talking about earlier about the actual skills. And I think even as a teacher though, go back 2 years, if someone would have sat in front of me and said, right, you need to think about how your skills are going to link to future careers for kids, if I'm honest, I think I'd have probably struggled.
Yeah.
I know what we teach, I know what the skills are, but it wasn't until I kind of got into this careers education that actually I thought, you know what, this makes the link here, this makes the link there. So whether I spend that sort of 15, 20 minutes on that day thinking about how those skills can be linked into their lessons a bit easier, and possibly do a bit of research around different subject areas and potentially create something for each department that they can take away, that they can then go, actually, yeah, that is actually really easy to do. I can just say this skill links to this and this skill links to that. I think that's going to be my focus for this summer at least anyway. And then as I've got a bit more time on my timetable, I want to be doing learning walks a lot more.
Yeah.
So I'm going to be going around just to see if that is after the first term or so, once we've settled back down, to see if actually that is being taken on board, and actually it's not being seen as a, oh, here's the last 5 minutes of the lesson, here's the slide. But actually when I'm walking around a corridor, do I hear a teacher say, you're learning this because, almost. And as I said, I think teaching staff need the help. I think it's a bit unfair to say to somebody that's not been within the careers education, link your skills then, off you go.
Yeah.
If you've got no background to pin it on. And I think that should be my role now, the next few weeks at least, to find that.
Yeah.
What skills link to what? Why are they teaching this for this? And it's almost, if I can make those links for them, I think I'll have a lot less resistance from the teaching staff, because they've not got really much to do in that respect. So I know how much they've all got to do anyway, as we all have. So that's what I think I'm going to go away and do from this. I think I'm going to go away and try and find, there must be something somewhere of skills that from each subject area that potentially could be linked into lessons as sort of a drop-in sentence every now and again if need be, just to make sure it is clearly sort of threaded through.
Yeah. I can I know that anybody who knows me and is listening to this podcast know exactly what I'm going to say next, because I'm always banging on about it. But have you come across Skills Builder?
No, but I have seen it mentioned a lot on the Careers Leader page.
Probably by me.
I've seen it like mentioned, like, I don't know when you use Skills Builder. I don't know what it is at all.
Right.
So,
okay. So in terms of agreeing a topic, this is the point as a careers guidance professional, I would be signposting you as a next step to go away and research Skills Builder. Because it sounds to me like that will tick kind of 90-95% of the box for you.
What is it?
The way I sold it a couple of years ago to our staff, we were in a similar position. I wanted this to be, I mean, it's like listening to myself 2 years ago. I wanted skills. I wanted it across the curriculum. I didn't want that kind of tag on slide at the end of every lesson. And I recognize, particularly in our context with autistic students, that if I was an autistic student 2 years ago in our school, if I went to English, they would have talked about 10 employability skills. And then if I went to maths, they might have talked about 14 enterprise skills. And then if I went somewhere else, they'd have talked about 8 lives. You know, everywhere I went.
You just can't link them together, can you?
Yeah, they're all slightly different. There's 8, 10, 12, 14 of them. They're all called something different. And what I wanted was that kind of universal language, partly to help the students, but actually partly to reduce the workload for staff. Just to say, this is what we're talking about. You don't have to invent it. You don't have to do anything with it. Here it is. So Skills Builder, they they raise all their money from big business, and they've got some really big hitting partners that help fund their programs. Done some international research to identify 8 essential skills, is what they call them. Okay. The essential skills are in 4 pairs. So, for example, they're all color coded with some very nice logos and things. So your first pair is listening and presenting. So they sit together as your communication skills. Okay. They have assessment tools that they provide an assessment framework in 15 steps, so that you can, if you want to take it further like we did, you can start to assess where every student is in terms of their skills. But for the stage that you're at and where you're at the Mo, you can download the posters, the logos, the descriptions. They've got pre-prepared, very nicely prepared assessment videos. Absolutely tons of stuff, whether you're part of the program or you're not part of the program.
So have you almost like put this, let's say this, is it 8 skills you said? So if we almost said these are the 8 skills, and then the teachers are referring to those 8 skills in their teaching? Is that how they're doing it?
Yeah, pretty much. Okay. We use marking stickers, and we use some different kinds of reflection sheets. The skills logos are on all of those. Right. We report on progress against the essential skills. Every subject teacher assesses skills as they use them. It's been really successful with us, and actually it's had a big impact for very little time or financial cost, really.
Brilliant.
So yeah, go away and have a good look at that.
Will do. Yeah, anything that can help sort of embed the skills in. It's like you said, it ticks that box instantly, doesn't it? So yeah, perfect. And the kids will be getting out of it what we need the careers education to get out of it, regardless of the box being ticked.
Yeah, absolutely. And the impact for us, for me to be able to say confidently that if you went round our school and you spoke to students would be able to tell you what the essential skills are, what their strengths are, what their weaknesses are, what they're working on.
Oh, that's good.
And that's what you want, isn't it?
That's massive, because I can guarantee not one person at mine will be able to do that.
Yeah. So good. That's felt like a bit of proper careers guidance, signposting you to some information to go and
really
find out. Yeah, good. This is a very satisfying section for me, and this is where guidance becomes advice, and I can signpost Laura to a resource that will help her to achieve her action. Of all the podcasts released so far, this is the clearest example of how allowing a client to talk about their issue, their worry, their concern, and from that identifying their own action, the career professional can then provide that expert knowledge to signpost the client to a resource that's going to support them. In a face-to-face meeting, and time allowing, I would have gone onto the Skills Builder website to show her how to access it and help her to navigate the site. Instead, I spoke from memory, so apologies to Skills Builder if what I've said is not 100% accurate. So that kind of brings us to the end, really. It's been brilliant talking to you.
Yeah, thank you for talking to me. It's been lovely.
Yeah, it's a nice chance, hopefully, for guests. It's a nice chance to kind of book some time in to talk about stuff. And I know you've said that your SLT are very supportive, but sometimes it's nice to do that with somebody who is impartial and independent and not attached to your school,
and out of the loop a little bit from us.
Yeah, absolutely. So is there anything else that you just wanted to say or raise? That's me just doing the
I'm going to go away and start Googling this skills builder that I need to have a look at, I think.
Yeah, brilliant. That's a good starting point for you. Okay.
Thank you ever so much for that. I really appreciate it.
No worries at all. That's kind of part of the job. Yeah. So again, thank you very much for your time. Thank you for being a guest and sharing your worries and your plans. Because if you've got those worries, then I'm sure there are careers leaders all over the place who have got exactly the same worries. So
yeah,
hopefully what we've talked about has helped give them some ideas and at least make them feel that they're not alone in feeling worried about the future for some of our young people. All right, Laura.
Thank you very much.
Thank you. Take care of yourself.
Bye.
Bye. If you'd like to follow us on our fortnightly journey as we go careering into the liquid world of career education, go to www.kognoggs.co.uk. My name's Rob Cooper, and you've been listening to Kognoggs, a career ed podcast.